Welcome back, everyone, to Movies and TV Shows on the Ball. My name is Steve, your host,
I'm
and
Jay.
and on this episode, we are going to be talking about we've got two videos coming. The first one is going to be on the Gargoyles, and then episode 2 will be on the Flintstones movie.
Right.
And we're going to do Gargoyles real quick because it's kind of we've got just kind of a
Limited
quick
time.
episode.
Right.
Yep. So, Jay, let's talk about Gargoyles. What was your first? I mean, it was a Disney show.
Right. It's a Disney show, which means growing up, I didn't watch the Disney Channel too much.
I don't think it was on. I think it was on. Like I think it was on. It was like produced by Disney, and I think it was on ABC. I think originally on ABC, like Saturday morning cartoons kind of thing,
Yeah. So
where we talked about And I remember that the show was sort of it was a show that I felt like was one of those shows that when you watched it, it was just kind of cool. Like it deals, so it's like something to do with Vikings, and then after Vikings, it deals with um, ninja or Vikings, and then like they take the
to go to the future, or sort of like modern present
modern
day.
modern they like he like takes a castle and puts it in New York or something.
Right. Yeah. To break the curse,
Break the
and it's
Oh,
sort of
so
like the
what?
future,
So
but it's
you
like
you
a
sound like you know kind of. So I'll get. How about we get into the talk about the um Zorro, or not Zorro, the Gargoyles,
uh,
kind of origin, and then we'll get into the show like cast and crew. Or do you want to do cast and crew first, and then?
okay. Well, I don't know the cast and crew.
Okay, actually I know the cast and crew. So,
Okay.
let's do the let's see. So, Gargoyles. So briefly, it's about like these gargoyles that basically are guarding a castle
Right.
and like
They're
uh,
stoned during the day, and at night they sort of break out.
break out and fight crime pretty
Yeah.
much. And but I think it's but it starred, I think it had Keith David, who was the voice of Goliath,
Okay.
and then it had it had Jonathan Frakes, who played Riker in Star Trek Next Generation. He also directed Clockstoppers,
Okay.
and he was the villain, voice of the villain,
Oh,
uh,
Xanatos.
Xanatos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
He's
then
I think he's just like unrated. He's sort of like one of the top like animated villains of
oh
all time.
really,
Yeah, just
really,
because like he's very cunning and devious type. Just
that's
planning
cool.
stuff
That's
out.
cool. So I kind of knew about gargoyles, and I felt like it was a pretty clever idea. They guarded the city, they guarded the castle. They don't fly, they
They glide.
glide, which I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Um, but
definitely had some cool. I had a couple of their toys growing up.
well, I
Definitely had very
remember you
cool
had the
action
toy where you
figures.
put the stone on them,
Oh, and the skin that you can peel off.
and
Yeah.
they either peel off or there's like a button on them that like they would break off because Goliath would go roar, and Goliath is voiced by Keith David,
Okay.
and Keith David he was the CIA director in the classic Frankie Muniz movie, Agent Cody Banks.
Oh, excellent.
And he was in I think he was the voice of Dr. Pelusilis in The Princess Bride,
Okay. I didn't know that.
and he was also in some other films.
Okay.
Um do you what was your take on Gargoyles when you first saw it? I guess we
I
can.
guess I like Gargoyles a whole lot. The sort of sad thing is, since I was primarily on like a Cartoon Network Nickelodeon kid, I didn't actually watch the show that much, but I did have the movie that I
Now the
watched.
movie was pretty much like three
Yeah, it's pretty much the
episodes,
first three
first
episodes.
three episodes, but they were like combined where it was like I think they sort of branched it where the pilot, because I think and that's the thing that my friend Bibb said about a pilot episode, or he says your first three episodes are really your pilot episode. Um, then you had I think there was Goliath, who was then they got names from the city streets
Right.
because there was Bronx or Brock,
There's like Brooklyn.
Brooklyn,
I can't remember all their
and
names.
there's Lexington. There's because I remember when we used to like pretend to play gargoyles.
Right.
Your brother always wanted to be the big one. Like
Okay.
you were either Goliath, I was Brock, and there was oh gosh, there was a big fat one.
Yeah, sort of like gray or white beard.
No, not the white beard one. The
Oh,
green one.
the dog one.
No, not the dog. It was
I can't remember their names off the top of my head.
uh I think okay, hold on. There were the cast or there was oh, the Gargoyles was the cast. Oh, the cast down here. Hold on. List of gargoyles. Okay, so there were the man.
Hudson.
There's
Brooklyn.
Goliath, who
Right.
was the leader of the Manhattan clan. Goliath is named for the biblical giant. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hudson, Brooklyn, Lexington, Broadway, Bronx, Angelina, the daughter of Goliath.
Oh, so we made you be the dog. I use the dog.
Uh,
Josh is the dog.
Foo Dog. Who's the evil? Then there's like Nashville. I think this is later
Those are
in.
like, yeah, those are later.
Uh, but who was the evil? There was an evil girl,
That's the what was her name?
Demona.
Demona.
Demona, yeah. And it was interesting. I was watching like I think the Nostalgia Critic was doing like a review of it, kind of
Uh,
for his show, and he said like Jonathan Frakes was Riker in Star Trek. Then I think Maria Shirts
uh-huh.
was in Star Trek. That was Deanna Troy in Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Okay.
Who was that empath who always like would know your future, know if you were lying or not.
Right.
And then there was I remember that, and then um, then I just remember Lexington. So do you remember? Do you want to kind of skim through the pilot real quick, or and then kind of talk about that?
Yeah, we can watch one
Uh,
of the
uh,
first episode.
all right.
And cover
So we're
that.
gonna watch the pilot and tell you our thoughts. So we just got done with the pilot episode, which was pretty kind of self-explanatory, and
Right.
the
Sort of starts off with like a disaster happening in New York with like rocks falling down from a skyscraper.
and
We briefly meet, I think, one of the main characters, the
which is
detective,
named Ellis. That's it.
Eliza Meza, I think.
Eliza Gargoyles.
But then it pretty quickly goes to like a flashback of their origin story.
Yeah, and it's pretty much I feel like this episode was sort of like the kind of like two-parter, and this is uh two-parter to um yeah, because I guess it's actually Awakening Part 1,
Right.
and it pretty much so we get to see Eliza Mazzala, who is played by Sally Richards Whitfield, who was in she was only in Black Dynamite and I Am Legend, to name a few.
Okay.
But she was also in Antoine Fisher as well. Anyway, she basically she's like seeing, oh, why are all these rocks and stuff falling down? And then she's like, and then I think we're pretty much stuck in Scotland in the year
Is
what
it
was it?
19 or wait no sorry 994 I
Ni-
think.
1994, and basically all it sort of takes place pretty much basically these Vikings are basically storming this castle
Yeah, in Scotland.
in Scotland, and it's during the day. Well, it's kind of evening, and as they're storming the castle, the sun starts to go down. And in the words of Kenny Chesney, when the sun goes down, the gargoyles come out. When the sun goes down, the gargoyles kill when the sun. Yeah. Anyway, um, what? And so they basically kind of battle
Yeah, the Vikings
the
off,
Vikings,
right?
and then there is and as they're battling, and they kind of, and it's kind of pretty gruesome for a kid show if you
Yeah,
think.
it's pretty. This is one of the more sort of a bit darker themed kid
Think,
shows. Yeah,
yeah, and I mean, which I think makes it work really good. And for a Disney show, it's still,
right. Yeah, definitely for a Disney show.
yeah,
So they sort of save the castle, and then we can see like the sort of the lordships of the castle, and then
so
sort of their.
there's the king, or is it a
I
king
think
or
it's a queen for this cat.
queen or prince? No, it's a princess, or is it?
I don't know.
It's like a woman that's a princess or a queen,
Right.
and she is like, she knows the gargoyle, or
Yeah, but she also there's a lot of like the people there are afraid of them and think of it like
they're monsters, and there's like a
right.
village that is probably don't go,
Yeah, it's sort of like they took in some refugees and they're also sort of scared of the gargoyles.
yeah. Um, I mean, it was and so the gargoyles have to kind of fight. They fight the Vikings,
Right.
and
Um, and then sort of the captain of the guard is like, you should go, go chase them down to
I
get them to run away.
right, and they start to glide, but
Because they
they
can't
kind of
fly.
they assume we kind of assume they fly.
Or I guess over net they haven't said that yet.
Yeah, yeah, they
Um,
assume they fly.
right. And so they find out that the army they were tracking was a diversion.
Yeah.
And so, but they're not able to fly back to the castle before sunrise.
And sunrise makes them so like they're pretty much sunrise turns them into stone,
Right.
which I think it was a pretty clever idea when you think about it.
Right. And
Uh,
so this episode sort of ends with the sort of the captain of the guard sort of turning on the queen.
Yeah.
And we realize
and
they've been betrayed.
and I kind of was kind of hoping, and I felt like it felt like maybe it was a pretty good pilot, but I think it's kind of like what Josh Whedon said. Your first 3 episodes are really
Right.
your pilot, and I think that's kind of true. What do you think of just the design of the gargoyles? I
I think
like.
they're excellent design. And just I think it's one of the strong. It is a pretty well animated
Yeah,
show. It's sort of
and I mean it's animated for what it is. I put some money into the budget, or
right.
it's money in it, and you can really tell. And I feel like there's a very interesting lore, and
Right.
I'm really kind of excited to see what it's like when they get back to New York
Right.
in 100 years, because this takes place in the 15th, the 14th century, or not 14th century, but 13th century, somewhere in the Crusades or Viking
Oh
era.
yeah, this has been I guess
Uh,
10th century.
um, what did you think of what do you think of it as a pilot, as a first episode? I mean,
I think it's pretty strong.
as you've kind of watched this as a kid, would you be like, okay, I'm ready for more,
Oh,
or
definitely. Yeah, this would have
and
grabbed me really
I think
quickly.
just the design of the gargoyles is cool,
Yeah.
because I guess let's kind of go through before we kind of wrap it, because I guess the episode wraps up where they kind of they kind of conclude with, I guess, uh, kind of the years passing, and then Xanados coming in
Yeah, I think that's on the next episode.
next
Yeah.
episode. But for this episode, I like the character. Let's kind of go through the characters.
Okay.
There is Goliath,
Right.
he's the leader of the group. He's like the Leonardo, if
Right.
you will, of the and he's sort of kind of more of it seemed like he was more of a protector
Yeah, definitely.
of the queen or princess or whatever.
Definitely the castle. So I think we sort of like they briefly mentioned. So like they've been living on this cliffside since
Yeah.
before the castle was there.
Yeah, yeah. And so it kind of like, and I think there's like, and it's got really good I mean, and I like the dynamic between the characters. I think you've got Goliath, who's very much, as I said, the leader, and he's also sort of very the stern one.
Right.
Then you have uh, they don't really have names in the pilot, or they'll gain their names probably at the end of the pilot. You
Right.
know, but from what I know, there's Goliath, who's the purple one.
Right.
There's Lexington, who's the yellow or kind of green puke-looking thing, puke color.
Right.
And I think Lexington's more of the kid in a way.
Yeah.
And then Brock's a little bit more like a teenager,
Yeah. And I think Hudson's the older, more veteran
more a
one.
veteran kind of guy. And then there's I want to call her Damin
Demona, I think.
Demona, I
Yeah.
think, who is actually, and it's kind of interesting. She's voiced by uh, the the same girl who played uh, Maria Shriver. It's not Shriver. Maria Streetus, who was Troy, Dana Troy in the Star Trek
Okay.
movies, and then you've got, which we haven't really mentioned, but you've got Jonathan Frakes as Xanados, and Jonathan Frakes was directed Clockstoppers and was Captain Riker, which I think we've kind of mentioned before with the cast. But it's a really good first pilot. I want more. You
Right.
know, I felt like it was really I mean, it was kind of a pretty short episode. You know, pacing wise.
Right. Especially
But
once they took out the commercials, you
yeah,
realize
you
how.
gotta go like, oh gosh, it's really fast. But I'm kind of excited to see kind of where we're gonna go in the story. So that is so for part one, out of a 1 to 10 scale, I'd probably give it an 8 or 9.
Yeah, I'd say an 8 or 9. This would get me really intrigued as a kid of like how's it going on and just how.
And I think it's just I'm kind of interested in the mythology of it.
Right.
And I mean, I've seen a couple episodes, but I've never really kind of understood the lore and stuff. But anyway, that's part one of our look at gargoyles. Part two will be coming up next. Hey guys, welcome back to part two of Gargoyles: The Awakening, which we just found out that part two is
Of 5 parts,
5 parts,
not
three,
not two, but
but 5.
5.
So we're gonna be doing. I guess this is gonna be a continuation video. So it might be a little bit long, but we're gonna do it in 3 parts. But it should be a complete video by the time we're done.
Right.
Because we thought it was just gonna be one episode. Little did we know. Anyway, so let's talk about part two.
Right.
Um,
Sort of picks off of
Picks
from
off
part
part
one,
one.
where sort of the gargoyles have been betrayed.
by
I can't remember as the captain of the guard of the castle.
yeah.
And so the Goliath has just come back to the castle, finding all the other gargoyles have been smashed.
Smashed. So apparently there must have been like a lot more gargoyles that were
Right.
around,
Yeah.
and the only ones that were remaining are pretty much your cast,
Right.
if you will. You have, well, you'll find out they've kind of come up with their names later.
I think probably in episode 3. I'm
in
guessing.
episode 3, I'm guessing, but I think I think it's Goliath.
Right.
Brooklyn is the red one, right?
I think
Or
so. You got
Bronx.
Bronx, Hudson.
Hudson's the
I think the older guy.
older one,
Yeah.
and then
There's the dog.
the dog. There's Lexington,
Okay, right.
because I think they're all based on street names.
Yeah,
in New
because
York
they get transported to New York in this
Yeah.
episode.
in this episode. So, part two. Let's talk about part two real quick.
Right.
What do you think? Let's tell me what the story was.
Yeah, so basically, we find it is sort of continuing. The gargoyles have been betrayed. All the gargoyles except for our like main cast have
Cast.
been smashed up.
Right.
So Gargoyles does all mad. He's pretty great at these sort of dramatic roars.
Yes. And basically, what I liked about it was it really showed sort of like you had the evil, because the movie or the I guess this was sort of like the 3-part episode, because I know a lot of television series
Right.
do this where they'll make, like, to make a full length movie, they'll take the 3 episodes and combine them as a movie. So
Right.
this does feel like it is a movie. I mean, they feels
Yeah, they're
like
going. Yeah, they're sort of building up quite a bit of lore. It's a lot more to the backstory than most things in the '90s. Was like, here's some like toxic waste and some animals, and then bam, you go. Here's some like
Ninja Turtles. Yeah.
right, some like
Yeah.
or street
So,
sharks or
Street Sharks or whatever. And,
right.
And like, but what I liked about it, so let's get the plot done, and then we'll kind of go into what we liked
Right.
about it. So there is a princess, or she's
Right.
just a maiden.
It was sort of the princess of the castle, and so like sort of after they're betrayed, she gets captured.
She gets captured, and I asked you, is she a descendant of? Does she become the descendant of the cop?
Okay, not that I'm aware of, but I have not seen the entire series. So I
Okay,
think it does get weird with like time travel and
or something like
yeah,
that.
it gets strange.
Yeah, because like I kind of was like thinking to myself that it was sort of like she's kind of this like she gets captured by because I kind of figured like she knew the she knows the gargoyles,
Right.
like she has a relationship with Goliath, not a real romantic relationship, but a friendship with.
Sort of. Remember the first episode. She was not a fan of the gargoyles. She was sort of like looked down on them and thought them like just monsters.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because I think we watched the first.
It's been a while.
It's been a while since.
Right.
Because I thought but so she pretty much gets captured. So she's tied up. And
right. It's her and the Magus,
and
her
Magus,
or wizard.
The wizard. And Magus kind of reminds me a little bit like James from Team Rocket kind of has
I could,
that
yeah,
kind
with
of look to him.
with the hair.
Kind of. I mean, the way he's drawn, is very Japanese looking. Not Japanese, but kind of anime looking.
Yeah, his sort of robe sort of did look like a kimono.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And he basically.
And he did have like like sort of the white hair. Sort of like
yeah.
He just sort of looked like a anime character.
Anime character, yeah. So he's got his groups of people, kind of. They're got a fire and they're like eating and.
Sort of like the main Viking guy's like sort of like laughing like I'm glad I never learned how to read, and he's burning his spell book.
Yes, and the wizard's like, "Oh,
my spells,
my spells," and he's like, "Ha ha 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 ha." Yeah, I feel like they should have like a ha 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 ha, puny human, you're a wizard, you and your stupid magic, and the flames are going off, and then.
We sort of hear like Goliath is like we're gonna go save the humans anyways,
and I think
and get the revenge on the Vikings.
Get the revenge on the Vikings,
right?
So they go in and they fight.
Yeah, they sort of fight off the Vikings.
And what do you think of the fighting?
I thought it's pretty decent.
It's pretty for a kids Disney show. This action was really well. It was really well, and it's really well animated as well. I kind of liked what they did with kind of just like action and the music and the score.
Right. Oh yeah, it's great music, and these I don't know. Again, sort of back to Goliath's roar. He feels that he's so emotion, like he's like. He could feel his pain of like.
I mean, like I kind of watched a little. When it was on air, I would watch. It was sort of like a, episode. Like I think when it was on air, when I watched it at your house before Disney Plus and everything.
Right.
I didn't know any of this lore because it was always like. So I just remember there was the robotic. Gargoyles, which I guess we'll see later in the
eventually,
series.
Yeah.
So anyway, there is these Vikings have captured these, and they're like drinking and carrying along and going and being very merry after taking over the castle.
Right.
And then Goliath shows up.
Right. And then they pretty quickly rout most of the Vikings, and then the main Viking guy sort of grabs the princess and runs to the cliff to sort of hold her hostage.
Or sort of like going, it is that kind of moment where, if you kill me, I'll kill her.
Right.
You can't have, sort of like, it's kind of like that scene in Let the Boy it's sort of that let the girl go.
Right.
It's kind of the action thing. And what I liked about this show, or the first pilot, I was a little disappointed because I was kind of thinking, okay, they'll just explain it. But you said that this was a
five
five-part series,
right,
five-part story arc. That was the whole movie, I think.
Right, and it sort of explains how they get to New York and sort of sets up the show.
Okay, so part two pretty much still takes place in more of the
but like half of it's in the past, and
half
of
it's in the future,
right,
or
present day.
Present day. So basically, we're still in the past.
Right.
He saves one of the Viking villains pushes what's the princess's name?
I can't remember her name, but essentially they all three fall off the cliff, and then Goliath manages to save the
him
princess
because he can glide, not fly, but glide, and he saves them, and he like scratches her, and she's untied, and she's like, Goliath, thank you for saving me, blah blah blah. And, and
this is another section where we also get another great roar where he says he doesn't even get revenge because he wanted to murder the Viking guy.
The Viking guy, yeah. And I think Goliath is a little bit bloodthirsty in this.
A little bit, yeah. He's normally pretty,
He seemed calm when I
calm
watched
and like very patient, yeah.
And he might. It might be a character arc where he's gonna grow. Right. Or he grows a little bit more.
Right. Because they did like kill all the other gargoyles.
Yeah,
just
that kind of does piss you off a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like his beloved.
Now we don't get to see. We haven't seen
Demona.
Demona.
No, right now we think she's dead.
But they're a couple in the 1500s, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this episode does him start like holding a pile of rocks, like sort of crying over his beloved, which we assume is Demona.
Who he thinks died.
Is dead. Yeah.
Is dead. Okay. So then.
Meanwhile,
in the future, or in
the past, the wizard has thought the gargoyles, by them coming back, has killed the princess.
So he's framing the gargoyles.
And so he casts evil spell.
So he casts a spell, and the spell this spell is pretty much that sets up their sort of like the rules of being a gargoyle, where they can't like come out during the day anymore.
What? Yeah, this is what freezes them through time. So he makes it so like they will remain stone until their castle is above the clouds.
Above the clouds.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's their sort of
right. And so then it turns out to be a whole misunderstanding where the princess didn't actually die, and then it turns out the exact pages that were burned was the counter spell.
And
so now it's just Goliath, and every other gargoyle is either dead or turned into stone.
Gotcha. So so that makes sense. I kind of feel like I watched it, but I was like, I felt like I needed to watch. I didn't know there was like a 3-parter to this, and I felt like I needed to watch. I was thinking that this whole series, the first pilot, was gonna just explain everything in like 20 minutes. I like this. So keep, I guess.
Okay. So keep going.
So no, let me at least add some stuff in it. So basically, he puts the spell in there.
Right.
And then talk to me till you get to Xanados.
Okay. And so pretty much now the humans are pretty like, whatever we can do to help you, Goliath. And so Goliath is like, and I sort of missed this back when I was 10 years old. He does mention there are some more eggs in the rookery that are going to hatch, but he is so sad right now. He's like, just turn me to stone
and let me stay
with my like brothers.
Yeah. Okay. So and then he says, "As you wish."
Right.
And he turns them into stone. And let's talk about. So what I do like about it, and I think in the series they always have kind of a specific pose.
Right.
That they make Goliath, because I remember we used to pretend to play. Gargoyles, because you had that awesome swing set.
Little play structure thing.
In your house, which was like, I just looking back, I was like, I can't believe you had that. And we used to play, and I think you were Goliath, or
probably,
Goliath was always like this,
sort of like the thinking man.
The thinking man pose. And then I saw that then there was and then like there's Brooklyn,
Right.
who's the red one, right? No, is
I
that
can't. We'll get it figured
we'll
out
get it
next
figured out
episode
next episode
when
who
they
they
give
are.
themselves
There's the
names.
red one. There's the one that's the old man,
Hudson. I'm pretty sure
Hudson
he's Hudson.
is the gargoyle. Then there's Lexington, who's the
Green
kind of
one, I think.
green one.
So yeah, I guess it is
And
probably
then the
Brooklyn.
fat one is
Oh, right there, probably the fat one.
Bronx. I can't remember. We'll figure out the names, but like
Right.
they kind of are nameless in this episode.
Right.
So they ended up turning into stone, and then we'll get into Jonathan Frank's character, who played Riker in Star Wars.
Right,
Star
and that's
Trek.
where we cut to next is his character.
He comes in, and he's a millionaire or billionaire, or
I,
he's like owner of a.
I think he's like wealthy beyond measure almost.
He's
Yeah.
Scrooge McDuck. He's got the Scrooge McDuck money. He has the money. He does he own a company? Like does it say what kind of company he owns?
I can't remember. I think it's just called like Xanatos.
Xanatos Industries. Yeah.
Something. Yeah. Something.
And
something
so
like that.
he flies his helicopter into Scotland,
Right.
and he's like, I'm in Scotland, and the castle's still there, and moss
And vines have grown
vines
over
and
the
ivy are
gargoyles.
all covering the once glorious castle.
Right.
And then, after that, he's like, I don't know how much do you want. He's like, how much do you want for the castle? And he's like, the castle's not for sale, or was it something like not for sale, or
He pretty much like calls his butler person and is like,
He's
just
like, is it
pay,
count
like
or
make the
something?
offer, like
it's like I'm here at the castle. Make an office for $1 million.
Owen is the butler's
Owen.
or sort of like his assistant's name.
Assistant, and
Yeah.
do we get to see? Well, we don't get to see Owen.
No, I think he's
Not
just
the
like
first-
he's just on the phone.
He's on
I
the
think.
phone with
Yeah.
him. Right. And so he makes a call, and he shifts. Does he? And then he makes the call,
Right.
and then
They pretty much disassemble and reassemble the castle in New
reassemble
York.
the castle in New York, and that's a pretty cool scene.
Right. On top of a skyscraper.
On top of a skyscraper. And
Right.
I always kind of wondered what skyscraper that was. Because like New York, I think like a lot of like, it's New York because
Right.
we do see the Twin Towers.
Right.
Because this was
I think 95.
1995, 94.
Right.
So we get to see. So they basically put he puts the castle to New York, and Goliath wakes up because the moonlight
Spell.
shows us who we really are. We
Yeah.
are not, because that kind of reminds me of Pirates of the
Yeah. The spell's broken. Yeah.
Spell's broken, and then he comes in to. Okay, so he comes in and Jonathan, what's
Xanatos.
Xanatos shows him kind of like you've been,
You've been asleep for 1,000 years.
2,000 years. It's finally to hang out in New York City. So Xanatos comes in and kind of basically explains that he's been, asleep for 1,000 years, or 500 years, and that you need to.
Yeah, and then he sort of doesn't get too much. He's sort of explaining
That'll be part 3.
because suddenly sort of this helicopter shows up with these like sort of like
SWAT team guys.
yeah, like SWAT team looking
And
military
do we know
people.
Who they are?
Not yet, no.
Yet? I mean, you probably know.
Yeah, vaguely. Yes, I remember, but I'm not going to spoil it.
Yeah. So they come in and they start shooting at the Xanatos.
Xanatos and the gargoyles.
And then we get to see kind of an action scene with
Right.
the gargoyles taking down
Right.
the SWAT team.
Right.
Pretty much. And I like what we get to see kind of how like they all bring their they do kind of remind me a little bit like the not Ninja Turtles in character, but more Ninja Turtles in sort of like the fighting
Specialized. Some are like specialized in different.
specialized fighting,
Yeah.
And I liked what they did with the fighting.
Yeah.
You want to? I guess what I kind of liked about the fighting was you got to see them kind of throw these men and stuff. And I like the fact that they're actually people. And
Right.
they're not like robots, because if you remember I watched the Ninja Turtles thing, the Foot Clan,
Right.
the Foot Clan were all robots because I think they couldn't like show violence.
Right. So it's okay to chop up a robot, but not a person.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
So for the gargoyles, they instead just throw people
Throw people, yeah.
into like brick walls
Brick
and stuff.
walls. So
That's okay.
That's still okay, yeah.
Um,
But they're gargoyles, so they're not
right.
turtles. They're
Yeah.
not,
So we don't. I think we didn't get to see if they were bulletproof, but we did
Um,
see like they get tased, and there were
they
lots
tased.
of grenades being thrown.
grenades being thrown, which I didn't know. Like I mean, this I've seen. Like I said, looking back on it, I've seen like 4 or 5 episodes just kind of randomly. I just remember there was like an episode where there's like
Yeah,
gargoyles
robot
and stuff.
gargoyles. Yeah.
That's all I can remember from the show.
Right.
And I think like the female one has like an elixir that makes her not turn to stone when she's during the day or something.
Okay, gotcha.
I can't remember exactly,
Right.
but we'll get into it if we go through the series. But this is just a story arc, I guess. I guess so. They fight the guards, and then we're kind of getting closer to the end of the episode.
Yeah, we're getting too close, and then we sort of tie back into the very start of
So
the
first
part.
part of it was we saw rain and
Sort of like explosions in the sky.
explosions in the sky. It looks like it was a thunderstorm.
Right.
But then falling down, there's a giant piece of
Rocks and rubble. Yeah.
rubble, and then we see
I think it's Eliza.
Eliza
Yeah.
sees that
Or
she's a detective. She's like, everybody, and claw marks. So I'm guessing in episode 3, part 3, they finally meet.
Right. I
I'm
think she does.
guessing
Like,
that's
she's going to
kinda
start
what's
investigating.
Gonna happen. So I guess that's sort of the episode. What was your thoughts on episode 2?
I liked it. Like watching this again after many years of not
Does
watching
it hold up in a way?
Yeah, I think so. I guess I
mean-
didn't realize how I didn't realize Goliath asked to be frozen in
Yeah,
time.
I always kind of I kind of thought when I watched it the first time, I thought it was sort of like they were all cursed by the wizard.
Right.
Like it was like, and that is the reason why they were, turned into stone.
Right.
That's my pen. No, I'm kidding. Turned into stone, and that kind of turned into stone, and I thought that was it. But to have him be kind of voluntarily
Right.
do it was kind of that.
And the other ones were a mistake is sort of more tragic in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was part 2. What would you give it? I mean, I think this is a pretty good pilot.
Yeah.
Pilot for a series that I feel is like kind of underrated.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of people were talking about. I think I do remember my friend Bibbs did an April Fool, like they do an April Fool's rumor, like where they'll like get on the thing and they'll talk about, like they'll make a joke about movies that are going to be coming out.
Right.
And one of his was a live action Gargoyles.
Okay.
And he said, I think he pissed off a lot of people because they thought it was real.
Gotcha.
I like this episode. I'm really excited to see what episode 3 is. Now, one question I have to ask you is, since you've watched it, is it the first 3 episodes more? You said that this was based on a movie. Like,
yeah, the first 5 is a bundled into a movie.
They bundled the first 5 episodes.
Right.
So this will be part 3. Part 3 will be next time.
Yeah, next time.
And part 2, that's for part 2.
Right.
I will see, signing off. We'll see you for part 2 next time. Signing off for this one, I'm Steve.
I'm Jay.
Peace out. Bye. Welcome back, everyone, to part 3 of our Gargoyles special, which I can't believe we've already gone through 3 episodes already.
What's a quintology? What's the 5? Quads 4.
Quads 4.
I don't know. I was just curious. I don't know what you call 5.
Septology.
7, right?
7. quad something. I think it's
Pentastical.
Is it really?
I have no idea. I'm
Okay.
just
Anyway,
making up words.
so it's part 3 of 5.
Right.
So when we last left off in part 2.
Right. So part 2 sort of wrapped back around to the very first of part 1, where we see Detective Mesa seeing the rocks fly down from the building.
Okay, right.
And then we
right.
realize she's going to go up and investigate.
So she goes up and investigates, and she goes up. So part 3, she goes up to investigate.
Right.
She sees like the gargoyle. She like kind of puts her flashlight around.
Yeah.
And looks around and like no, and it's kind of really spooky when you think about it.
So
And
Castle at night.
Yeah. And she's like got her weapon drawn, and there's like then she gets kind of cornered with the gargoyles.
The sort of like we don't know his name, but the sort of the dog one.
The
sort
dog
of comes
one.
up growling at her.
The dog, yeah. And she's like, "What is that?"
Yeah.
It's kind of like that scene in Evolution. Did you ever see Evolution?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Like,
That's a good
there's
one.
this big dog in your thing. She's like, "Oh, we don't even have a dog." And it's that alien thing.
Right.
And so she sees the dog, and she's like, down, and she like keeps going back, and then she goes, "Ah!"
No, she pulls out the gun, and then Goliath grabs the gun and crushes it.
Yeah, she pulls out a gun. The Goliath comes behind her and like puts the gun and just crumbles it like a cookie. And then
she gets scared.
Then she gets scared off, and she falls off the skyscraper. While she's falling up, then we get commercial break, and then she falls off the skyscraper. Goliath comes down, swoops, and picks her up.
Right.
And she's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're flying."
And he's like, "I cannot fly.
I can just glide." So let's just get through the plot, and then we'll kind of get our.
Gotcha. So Goliath sort of land on another part of the building, and they're like, "How do we get back up?" And then we see like Goliath can do this cool, just sort of climbs up skyscraper.
Like he's just like, and like, but there's never like, how like Wolverine, when Wolverine does his like claws,
right?
It's always like this.
Right.
Goliath just kind of doesn't.
He just sort of
like,
shoves his finger into the stone.
He just goes like. And what I'm doing, audience, is just showing you how like climbing up the wall.
Right.
So he's climbing up the wall with her on her back, on his back. He gets up to the top.
And then they Detective Mesa sort of gained, not his trust, but Goliath. He sort of agrees to meet up with her the next night to sort of let her show her the city.
City, right? And so that day, and I love the fact. And what's interesting is she never talks to her superior.
Right.
Well, I guess not.
We don't know that. Yeah. And then Goliath has another meeting with Xanatos.
And Xanatos is kind of the, and she kind of, I guess. What do you think of Xanatos? Like, what? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, so they meet with Xanatos, and Xanatos is like going.
Yes, I don't know. I always like he's sort of like, he comes off sort of charming and very scheming.
Yeah.
And so he sort of tells Goliath that they've discovered who it was that attacked him on episode 2.
Episode 2, which were these soldiers.
Right. From, I think they gave us the name of a company called Cyber Bionics.
So
very futuristic.
So very futuristic. And I mean, it's kind of like, I guess this came out in what, 94? Terminator 2
Cyberdyne.
came out in 90. I mean, there was a big cyborg rush in like the early 90s. And
it sort of gives them like, you need to retrieve these discs from these, like the flying fortress, like a island fortress, and then an underground bunker.
And he's like, "Why should we help you?" Right? And and he's like, "Why should we help you?" And he's like, "Because I'm the only friend you have." Or
he sort of is not very direct with them, but he's is trying to get like Goliath on his side.
Yeah. Which I'm wondering if Goliath gets sort of like he turns like probably later in the show he turns against.
Yeah, we'll have to watch it.
We'll have to find out. But So anyway, I'll let you go through the story because I kind of was like, I had to felt a little bit
Yeah.
like,
Okay. So then, so after they meet with Xanatos, it sort of like comes daytime. Sort of skip over that. So the next night, they sort of break out, and so Goliath is going to go off to meet Detective Mesa, and then the other sort of three younger ones
right.
go off to explore the city.
And that, I like that. I liked how they kind of, and they kind of remind me of that juvenile
Right.
feel. I mean, like the
Ooh,
teenage
right.
of the teenage gargoyles. And what you notice is they all have a personality.
Right.
Like Brock or Brooklyn, I think is his name. Who's a red one?
Yeah. Officially we haven't learned their name. Yeah, they haven't gotten their names
So
yet.
the red one, pretty much is they're both kind of as a team, looking around.
Right.
We're kind of looking around and like, but there's never really like cool costume guy. Like that's the thing I noticed with like Ninja Turtles was Ninja Turtles like in the first episode when they put on the trench coats or when they walk around the first time they're like
Right.
cool costume guys.
Right.
There's never really anything like that. They pretty much keep it really secretive, you know.
Right. And so sort of Goliath flies off to a neighboring rooftop to meet Detective Mesa,
Yeah.
and then we find out who is named in this scene Hudson, the sort of the older, gargoyle. Yes, was trying to watch over Goliath.
Right, and like I guess is Hudson sort of a father figure to Goliath?
I don't think so, but we don't really sure. We don't know yet.
No, yet. Okay. I did like them kind of exploring, and then that was the end of the plot.
No, there's time before. Then it sort of cuts back and forth between Goliath and the sort of the younger ones. The younger ones, the little green one,
Lexington.
He's his thing is sort of like is obsessed with technology.
Okay, he is.
Yeah, is that Donatello? Which one's the turtle that's...
Donatello is obsessed with computers.
He's sort of like the Donatello of the group. And he's like, he sees a motorcycle.
He sees a motorcycle.
He's like, ooh, I've got to learn how that works.
Learn how it works. And then we kind of see, like, kind of Goliath doing some... Like, there's this couple that are walking into... There's this couple that are walking. They're walking on the streets, and like these two, and they look like '80s gang. Kind of like they've like got gun. I don't know. They kind of look like metal chains.
Right.
And I think he didn't have a bat, but I think he had like a knife.
I think one had like a shaved head. Like
yeah.
Piercings.
It kind of reminded me of like the kind of the. Just that 80s,
right.
80s, early 90s gang member that you kind of see.
Right.
So they are like fighting. They're not fighting. They are like they're like
threatening this couple.
Threatening this couple, and they pulled out a gun, or was it? It was a gun.
I don't know if they had a gun. Oh, they might have had, but I think it was mostly like chains and pipes
and stuff.
Yeah.
And then Goliath shows up.
Right.
And they like go, oh, who is this? And they try to beat him up, but he's too strong and throws him against the wall.
Right.
And I thought that was a cool thing, kind of like a cool,
right.
just to kind of show the gargoyles, kind of, and I kind of can tell that we're I think we slowly get to understand their personalities.
Right.
I guess throughout this
couple episodes, yeah.
Yeah, a couple episodes. What did you so are we done with this?
I guess the sort of the very last thing is sort of like it's sort of Detective Maze is showing Goliaths to the city, and so they sort of end up in sort of like a central park, like a park in the city.
Yeah.
And like Detective Maze, not everything's bad in the city. There's some good stuff.
Yeah, and I like that moment because it shows sort of like the there it kind of in one of the scenes I like going to another movie was Malibu's Most Wanted. There's that scene where he's like going, we get killed. There's when he's telling them how big the hood is.
Yeah.
And then these two little girls come by and says, hey, my princess just had puppies. And then they say, pit bull puppies, fool.
Gotcha, yeah.
Malibu's Most Wanted, another podcast we'll figure out sometime soon. But like I liked how she shows them that and I liked how their relation that you kind of can tell that she is sort of. But one thing I noticed that she does remind me of April O'Neil, but
Uh,
she's not as ditzy. Well,
right. Well,
not
she is
ditzy.
a detective.
Well, she is a but she's got more. She's a lot more. Not want to say ditzy, but she is a lot more like. I guess what I'm saying is she's a lot more um, personal. Like she's it's not like not what with April O'Neil. She's a little bit like oh she's like she's like these turtles. What am I supposed to do?
Uh,
Kind of like how like in Johnny in like Short Circuit, how the girl teaches Johnny Five and how like she's a alien and says this is a cat and this is this and
I just remember him just sort of screaming input and like
input, yeah.
input.
But like she's a stronger character than April.
Yeah, she's a strong. Well, I guess I can't remember exactly her character in the cartoon, but yeah, I like Detective Mace's character.
She's got some spunk to her, and I like. I mean, it's kind of, and I like how I would like to kind of, and I'm wondering if we get to kind of see her superior. Like,
yeah, I'm not sure. I can't remember.
I just remember the Robo Gargoyles.
Right.
That's the only thing I can remember from Gargoyles.
Yeah. Who knows if they're related to the Cyber Bionics company. And that's sort of how the episode ends is Goliath they're ambushed in the park and by
by a group of soldiers.
They look very similar to the Cyber Dynamics or Cyber Bionics people who attacked the castle earlier.
And so that'll be an interesting thing to see what's going to happen in the next episode.
Right, because it ended in a cliffhanger.
Again. I hope
every episode. Is
the whole show going to be a cliffhanger?
That's how most shows are.
Yeah, I know, but like
next time
on Gargoyles. So Jay, what was your thought? I guess now that we've kind of skimmed through the plot.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts on this episode?
This episode's a bit slower.
Yeah.
But I did like. I think I was just watching this, realized I liked it. It's sort of like the way the city is, animated. You get like the night city, sort of like you get with like a Batman animated series.
Yeah. Well, but like with Batman the animated
sort of
series,
like a darker animation.
But the animated series was sort of like it had sort of like it was like somewhere it was kind of a time capsule in a way, or time kind of because it had like you look at the cars. The cars are very like 1950s,
right.
1940s, but they have computers and stuff. I liked that. I did like that the city was, it was New York, or the 90s New York.
Right.
I mean, just kind of the same way as Ninja Turtles was. I kind of like. I like Xanados. I think he's a really interesting character. Not just a villain, but like, there's something to him.
Right.
But episode 3.
3, yeah.
Episode 3, I thought it was a pretty good cliffhanger.
Right. And I think it's going to set up some more actiony stuff these next episode. Yeah.
Episodes. So, how many episodes are there with the pilot?
So there's 5 in total. So we've got 2 more to go.
2 more to go.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Before we go, what was your thoughts on episode 3? How did you like episode 3 on a scale from 1 to 10?
I'd say this one's a bit lower than the earlier ones.
Yeah.
But I still enjoyed it. So maybe like a 7.5.
It's kind of like, I think it's slower.
Yeah, but
I think it's that it's like your pilot episode has to really kind of grasp the audience.
Right.
Your first episode does, and then I think that the second episode, second to third episode has to kind of go okay, by at least episode 5. And when I think episode 5, if you're not into the show, give up on it.
Right.
But what I like about Gargoyles is Gargoyles does the is I like how it just keeps going and going. So we'll be back with episode 4 next. Peace.
Right. Peace.
Okay, we're back on part 4 of Awakening of
right.
Gargoyles. So what'd you you want to run through the plot first?
Yeah, so so this one sort of starts out Goliath has been turned to stone, and
Yeah,
so
and
Detective Mesa sort of leads the cyber
and
biontics crew, like soldiers away from Goliath.
so just, yeah, and what I liked about that scene was I liked how it was sort of like um you get to see that she's action star, but what I like about it is she's a character and not just a female character.
I mean, like she's not like the like damsel in distress type
Well,
character.
not damsel in distress, but also not like oh she's a character that happens to be female.
Okay.
Like she's not just a damsel in distress, but she's not also like she doesn't really like make the point that she's a girl. She doesn't say like I'm a girl, I can handle it, Goliath. She just does it.
Yeah.
She just handles her stuff. Um, I and I like how she's running and she's fighting one of the guys. One of the guys grabs her and
Oh.
she flips him over his shoulder.
Right.
Um, and
Uh, Definitely like looks like she has some
kung fu
or
jujitsu or
judo
something.
something.
Um, let's see. She's let's see.
So she sort of dispatches all the remaining sort of soldiers,
Mm.
and then sort of stays with Goliath throughout the day.
Day and she tells him like, "Don't worry, I've got some off time. I can do it." And do like I don't have to
Right. They're
So
basically says
she
they're
falls
even now.
even and then she falls asleep or doesn't fall asleep, but she wakes up that night and then Goliath, the moonlight shows us who they really are, and he breaks out of his statue
Right.
or cracks him. But what I liked about what they did with the statue this time is when he's on the castle, he kind of like has the thinker pose,
Right.
and he basically the then it'll break and it'll go Rah!
Right.
And what I liked about what Goliath did in this one is he just turns the stone, breaks, and just gets up like it's nothing.
Right.
So
So Goliath says he needs to go back to the castle. So he flies back and sort of reunited with his other gargoyles.
and they're like, where have you been? And he's like, Goliath tells, kind of finds out that what all the other gargoyles have sort of explored the city and
Right.
their findings of the city.
And this is the point where they all get names.
Get names. So we've got the purple one, who's going to be Goliath,
Right.
but all the rest of them are names of streets of New York. You've got
Hudson.
who's the old one.
Lexington.
Lexington, who's the young one that's kind of got a bald head.
Right.
You've got
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Which one's Brooklyn?
The red one.
Or is that Bronx?
Sort of Bronx is the dog one.
Oh, Brooklyn. Brooklyn is the red one that has kind of like a sharp
beak or something.
kind
Yeah.
of thing. And then you have
Broadway.
Broadway is
The one that likes to eat a lot.
Yeah, so Broadway's the one that likes to eat a lot. And then he's green or turquoise, whatever. Then you had
I think that's all of them, right?
and then the dog.
Bronx.
Bronx
Yeah.
is the dog, and he's a roar, roar, and he's a dog gargoyle. So then basically they kind of meet.
They back up with Xanatos.
They go back up to Xanatos. What'd you think? And so they go to Xanatos, and Xanatos is living in this castle, or he has his business in this
skyscraper with a castle on top.
with a castle on top, which is awesome.
Right. And so Xanatos makes a big reveal that Demona is still alive.
And he's like, and what I like about it is, and I'm guessing, because I guess Demona is sort of the evil gargoyle.
Maybe we'll find
We'll
out.
find out. Okay. Well, I'm guessing that Demona is sort of so Goliath is like, or Xanados is like, Goliath, there's somebody who I want you to meet, and he's like, who? And then out of the shadows,
Uh-huh.
there comes a woman named Demontis, was it?
Demona.
Demona,
Yeah.
and she's like, Goliath, we can finally be together.
Uh-huh.
We can finally have a relationship. And Goliath is so happy,
Yeah.
and he thanks Xanados for doing this.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, did the guards show up?
No, so
Okay.
so like Demona showing up, and then Goliath getting attacked in the park was enough to persuade him to like help Xanatos in getting back his 3 discs.
3 discs.
So they're gonna go
So
attack the
Goliath. So
fortresses.
Goliath is basically kind of Goliath, and is basically kind of makes a deal with Xanatos to get his 3 discs back. So
Uh-huh.
that's kind of the climax of the episode.
Right.
Is they glide, both his group of gargoyles glide to the his building. Was it his
Yeah.
office?
So
His office, and they basically are go in there and fight.
yeah. So like
Keep talking.
Goliath and
So basically,
Demona fly up to the air fortress. The 3 young ones go to the island fortress, and the Hudson goes to the underground.
Underground. So I like, and let's kind of talk about that, because what I like about that is that you kind of get to see them do their individual
Right.
thing, like individual fighting.
Right.
And is that where the episode ends? Or
Yeah. Sort of. So we get a little bit of Goliath up in the airship.
yeah.
And then you sort of get a tiny bit of the 3 younger ones going in, infiltrating the other building. It
Yes,
sort of ends
and
in the climax of them. Like,
Well, they get into a elevator,
right.
and then the guards somehow disconnect the elevator.
And they're all waiting when
They're
they open
all
up
waiting
the door.
for it, and then they end up saying, "Okay, we're not going to wait anymore." They open the door and they start climbing the up to the up to the building,
Right.
and then the episode ends. So Jay, what do you think of this episode?
I like this episode. So you got a lot, sort of like a big reveals with Demona. I guess my favorite things was sort of them up in the airship, sort of like there's some like mist and steam coming out, and you sort of see like them sort of sneaking up at people
Right.
in the like the darkness with their eyes glowing.
I liked, and what I liked about it was I liked how we finally we get to see them do stuff. Like the episode before, we got to see them sort of go new world and kind of figure it out.
Uh-huh.
And in this one, I like that we got to see all the gargoyles do something,
Right.
be tough,
Right.
if you will.
Yeah.
And then I liked how Demona just kind of shows up. And Demona, I mean, can we just kind of talk about just the look of the gargoyles
Uh-huh.
real quick? Because like one thing I liked about the look of the gargoyles was that Goliath, like just the way Goliath has that mohawk, that long hair,
Yeah.
and has sort of Bronx has the beak.
Brooklyn has the
Brooklyn has the beak.
Right.
But it was I just I think they did such a good job with kind of characterization.
Yeah.
Of them.
Yeah, it's a very good
And
character
I think
design.
Eliza Eliza's character is very has character to her.
No, yeah, and that's another favorite part is this episode sort of detective Eliza's
Yeah.
part defeating the other soldiers.
Yeah, I mean, she
sort of like
actually
feels like a mini thriller movie.
thriller and I like how she can she can handle herself. I mean, I like the fact that she's not a news reporter. I mean, I know I'm gonna kind of like harp on the Ninja Turtle, not harp on, but compare them to the
Right.
Ninja Turtles, because
New York City,
and April O'Neil is a news reporter. April O'Neil just says, "Oh," and I don't know if and it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna go in here. Oh, there's Bebop and Rocksteady. Oh no, what do I do?" She can be like, "Oh, Bebop and Rocksteady."
Right.
I like this episode. I kind of feel like you kind of can see that there's more of a partnership with Goliath. They're building a partnership with Goliath
Right.
and Eliza.
Right.
and I kind of can see that their relationship with the meat,
Xanatos,
not Thanatos,
Demona.
Demona and Gargoyles,
Yeah.
or Goliath,
Right.
were that. So what would you rank this episode?
I'd say I'd rank this one up, higher up in like the nines.
I'd give it an 8.
An 8. Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't say. I mean, I would. I think because we're watching. I think watching it all the way through. Like,
Right.
I know what we're doing when you listen to the podcast. It's gonna feel like all the way through, but watching it, it's I'm kind of like, okay, we're getting the first. This is what, episode 4.
Yeah.
We're finally kind of getting our getting the kind of, we're on its wavelength.
Right.
So I'll give it an 8.
Okay. Nice.
So we'll be back for part 4.
Yeah. Part 5, the last
Part
part.
5, last part, and then we'll probably be able to do a little bit of a shorter episode for Gargoyles, episode
6.
6,
Right.
or episode 2.
Right.
But this is just the plot of, or this is just the origin story. So head up to episode 5, coming soon. Hey guys, welcome back to episode 5.
The finale.
The finale of our long due pilot of Gargoyles. It's called It's still Awakening Part 5.
Yeah, I think Awakening Part 5.
So Part 5 opens up with
it sort of leads back in sort of the end of episode 4. It was sort of like they had just sort of ended in a cliffhanger where they're all infiltrating the different bases,
right,
the cyber
bases.
biontechs, whatever.
So it's got what's his name? Goliath and
Demona
are in one area.
the airship.
An airship, and then Hudson
and Bronx
are in the
like underground subway base.
Underground subway base, and then Lexington and
Brooklyn and Broadway.
And Broadway are all.
And they're on like an island fortress type thing.
Yeah, they're on a Xanadu's ship, or Xanadu's.
I think.
Xanatos's. I don't know what's it called. Xanatos's ship, right?
I think
or like his little flying.
No, that's Goliath and Demona.
Goliath and Demona. Okay,
on the flying thing.
Flying thing. Okay. So
yeah, sort of. They all sort of, it's all like some action, and they're fighting the guards. They all sort of get their disc back.
Yeah, and its disc, of course, and their floppy disk.
Yeah, floppy disk.
And this was still 1994, guys. So, and one thing what I liked is the guards kind of reminded me of the Foot Clan in a way, or
a little bit, yeah.
Kind of not the Foot Clan, but just so generic.
Yeah, they're like sort of armor and like clothing and helmets sort of remind me of like the Star Wars Rebellion people.
Oh yeah. Like the ones in the little ships.
Yeah, that one that sort of Darth Vader sort of.
Oh yeah, with the
fights.
white.
Yeah, they're sort of like
the white things like in Spaceballs where he's like, "What did you?"
Yeah.
We got to do Spaceballs one time. Anyway, back to Gargoyles, and so basically, just.
Yeah, so basically, sort of all covered this. We get a little bit more sort of drama between Goliath and Demona, where she sort of, as she gets the disc, she sort of disables the airship,
and she basically
causes it to crash.
Goliath is kind of like, "Why are you doing this?" And Demona is pretty much saying, "Look, humans are going to, she kind of has that Magneto.
Yeah, she's like, all humans must die.
All humans must die, and she says, they're going to, they're going to destroy us, Goliath.
Right. Yeah. And so they all get the disc back to Xanatos.
And Xanatos is very. I think this episode is really where Xanatos sort of shows that he's slowly becoming the villain.
Yeah, or he's been
the villain.
Right, and we find out.
Right, we're finally getting to see him.
His
be more
machinations and plans are starting to be
villainous. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and he's like, "Thank you, Goliath, for giving me this CD. It's hard drive."
Right.
And Goliath is, I think, susceptible to Xanados, but he
doesn't
you
trust him.
understand where he's coming from, or you understand where Goliath is coming from.
Right.
Um.
So then, sort of after the drop of this, Goliath goes off and meets with Eliza.
Eliza, I think. Do you kind of watching? Do you feel like Eliza has grown through the 4-part pilot? Like she kind of she's more interesting than, let's say, an April O'Neil or
I mean, I guess I'm always been a fan of Gargoyles and Eliza's character. Yeah, she's
for me, I feel like Eliza kind of she's a lot interesting, not just smarter than April O'Neil.
I'd say she's more like an ally character.
More of an ally than like, oh, what are these turtles doing? What are these gargoyles doing here?
Yeah.
She just kind of like goes, gargoyles.
Yeah, it is somewhat. Yeah, she sort of acts somewhat nonchalantly to do like they're being like gargoyles. Besides just being like scared once, and then sort of like, okay, like, cool.
Yeah, and I kind of like Demona. Like I always kind of feel like when I was watching this episode, Demona and Goliath and Demona. Goliath is kind of having like, it's kind of a love triangle between Goliath, Demona, and Eliza. Not a love triangle, but friendship triangle or whatever.
Yeah. He's still telling about who can he trust and like what's going on.
Yeah. And
then sort of Eliza drops like a bombshell on Goliath that the little tracker chip was from Xanatos' company.
Wait, is that the first couple minutes of the episode?
Yeah, sort of. Like he goes off and meets Eliza, and that's where he learns that Xanatos has been behind everything. Yeah, that's sort of like the big reveal of this episode.
That was and when you watched it, I guess you've watched this
There's a couple,
show. When you watched it the first time, did that kind of like blow your mind a little bit, or did you kind of think?
I can't remember because I was probably like 8.
Yeah.
Something I was more
like I kind of felt like I mean, you can't, like as we've learned from Terry Silver from Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, you can't trust the guy with the ponytail.
Yeah, the super rich guy with the ponytail guy
in a business suit who does nuclear waste. You don't trust him.
Right.
That's what environmentalists teach you.
I know.
Pollution isn't the solution.
Yeah.
I kind of liked how, Demone so let's just kind of get with the story first and then.
Yeah. Yeah, so Eliza sort of drops that Xanatos was behind the initial attack. He had like framed the other companies and gotten sort of manipulated Goliath to stealing the disc for him.
And Goliath, I think is very naive because he is very much like, I don't trust humans. He kind of really takes a shot with Xanatos.
Yeah, he does initially because he's the one that brought him back.
Right,
so he's like, I guess.
And this is the episode where Goliath pretty much kind of sees Xanatos and goes, I really don't trust this guy.
Yeah.
This episode sort of the big liar. It's the liar reveal, if you will.
Yeah.
So anyway, Xanatos.
Yeah, he sort of uses in the meantime he uses those floppy disks. It's what he needs to activate his.
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
I'll let you finish, but
okay.
So this is where, and this is pretty cool because so apparently, and it's kind of interesting, and I want to see where it's gonna go because you kind of see in the first 3 episodes, Goliath. I wonder if Xanatos is basically saying, okay, I'll befriend Goliath to understand him so I can create because robot gargoyles, which looks pretty damn cool in that show, just to kind of get them to sort of, use the power, befriend them to understand them to create robo gargoyles.
Right. Or is it just like his whole plot was to move a whole castle to the top of his tower to bring back the gargoyles to use them to steal the data,
Yeah, yeah,
just so like he'd have
like,
like an alibi of like
like,
I wasn't behind it. It was like these monsters stole your data. It wasn't
yeah, it
me.
wasn't me. It wasn't me. Wasn't me. I kind of felt like that was sort of where it was going. Now kind of talking about it,
Uh-huh.
I'm like, okay, so that makes more sense watching it part 4 or part
Part 5.
5.
Right.
I kind of thought that Goliath, or and then so Xanados, we'll get to the plot and then we'll talk about our thoughts
Yeah.
on it. So Xanados, he's been making Robo gargoyles, and he finally so Brock Brock and Lexington are on the rooftops. Brock and Lexington are on the rooftops, and there is they see kind of a shimmering kind of thing
flying towards
them, and they think it's Goliath,
but
it turns out to be Robo Goliath.
Starts shooting lasers
and
out of
starts
its
shooting
arm.
laser beams out of its eyes or arms.
He has like a wrist cannon.
Yeah, like
pops
kind of
out.
Pops out, and he starts shooting them, and they don't believe that Goliath would turn on them, and they find out he's really a Robo gargoyle.
Right.
And what do you think the Robo gargoyles?
I think they're pretty cool. Yeah, I remember growing up, like they had some pretty cool toys of the robot ones that I never had, but I was always jealous.
Well,
of people
I
who had
remember
the
toy. I think we might have mentioned it. I remember you had the toys.
I had a couple of Goliath, or a Goliath.
You had
toy.
the gargoyle toys, but what's cool is you had like
stone
the
skin.
Stone skin. Yeah, stone skin, where like you would put the stone on. And then there's like a button that you press.
I didn't have the button one, but yeah, you just like peel it off and like.
Was it a peel off thing?
But the one I had was just sort of peeling off. But
okay,
some did have buttons where like they sort of like explode.
Exploded like.
Yeah. Right.
I kind of liked what they did. But the robot and it's kind of, and I think there was something in the kid. When I watched the Ninja Turtles first pilot episode on DVD.
Right.
One thing I noticed is that because they didn't want to put violence with kids, they made the Foot Clan robots.
Right.
And I kind of felt like that was sort of the same thing.
Yeah, same thing on this one.
They just kind of, because if you think about the guards, they pretty much, I think, and it's Disney, so they never really kind of, knock them out.
Yeah, pretty much only throw them or like knock them into walls
or something.
Yeah, but once they're a robot, Hudson was finally able to use a sword and chop one.
That looked pretty cool.
Yeah.
Just see, and it was sort of a medieval sword kind of thing. You know? What did you think of this? I guess then they fight the robots.
Right. Yeah. Sort of defeat the robots, and then sort of Xanatos and Demona come out with their own like lasers and bazookas.
Yeah. Oh, that was cool. Just see her with like a huge bazooka. That kind of reminded me of that scene, and or that sort of like it's a freaking musket.
Right.
Did you get that? From Malibu's Most Wanted.
Yeah.
And she gets the bazooka and she puts it on the thing, and I'm always kind of watching it now, watching this episode, is she being mind controlled in a way?
No, I don't think so. I think
or is she just
maybe she's probably being manipulated by him.
Okay, because it does make it seem kind of like she is.
She's definitely an ally of his.
Yeah, kind of an ally of Xanados. So she shoots down Goliath. Goliath falls down
and it's like, what are you doing?
And she's like, I'm doing this for the human, or
to kill all the humans.
To kill all the humans, because I think she has that Magneto complex.
Yeah.
In a way. What did you? So she ends up.
So this is like sort of the high drama confrontation between her and Goliath, where it's also this is sort of like an even bigger reveal is that we learned that she was behind the initial betrayer,
right?
That when they're in the castle back in the Middle Ages,
and that made it that was probably for me. I think watching it now, I'm kind of going, okay, watching it now, I'm like going, okay, that's a good twist. But probably if you said you watched this show a lot when you were you knew about the mythology and stuff. That probably went like, woo, blew my mind kind of thing that she was the evil. I mean, like you watch it now and you're like going, of course she's the evil vampire or evil gargoyle.
Yeah, she does seem
She's
like a
got
vampire.
Red eyes.
Right.
What was your thoughts on then? Okay, so where were we?
So they had sort of conversation with Demona, and then they sort of have like some final fight where she's shooting her bazooka, and then sort of like her and Eliza both fall off the building, and Goliath says Eliza they can't find Demona's body.
And that's the end of the episode.
No. Well, and then we see Xanatos getting put into a cop car.
And Xanatos he's probably like, I've got a good lawyer.
Yeah, he'll probably be out of jail in like an hour or something.
An hour or so, yeah. So that was the pilot, or that was the part 4. Yeah. The story. What do you think of this episode?
I thoroughly enjoyed this.
I think when you watch it, we've been watching it in splits, but I guess the way you're going to listen to it, audience, is it going to sound like a complete thing. But
right.
I feel like it's got a good vibe, and I can kind of see why people were fans of this show growing up. And I like it just because, it's not. I mean, it's for property now, but it was so original, kind of fresh and original when you think about it. I like this episode. I like the relation. I'm kind of interested in seeing the relationship between Goliath, like if there's like a love triangle or just a relationship triangle with Demona, Goliath, and Eliza. Right. Because I've only seen like bits and pieces of the show when it was on TV. I like that. I like because I just kind of knew about I think I've watched these 4 episodes with the Gargoyles, the movie thing at your house, and I kind of felt like this was a really good, solid pilot, and I can kind of see why fans are looking at, wanting to see a live action retelling of this, or I think my friend Bibbs kind of said he had. Film critics usually do like a April Fool's joke, and kind of like around April 1st, where they kind of like, and his was a live action Gargoyles. Gotcha. And people went nuts and thought it was real, and it turned out it was actually a thing. But I have to say, I like this show. I like the first couple episodes. I'm kind of intrigued. I really want to see like where the mythology goes. Are we going to see more of like the descendants of the castle from? Right. I mean, don't spoil anything.
Okay, I've primarily only seen like this, like the movie. I didn't watch the show too much. So I don't really know who's like going to be the recurring villains or.
Yeah, and I think there's probably more villains than Xanatos. I mean, Xanatos, whatever his name is. I think Xanatos is really going to be the evil or like the mastermind behind it, kind of, because he does kind of remind me a little bit like Lex Luthor, but. A little bit, kind of its own thing, kind of thing. But I have to say, for a 5-part pilot, it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it really sets up all the characters.
It sets it up right, and it doesn't feel like it moves. It does feel like you're watching. I mean, you're right. It does feel like you're watching a full movie. Yeah. So, on our thoughts on the pilot, what would you give as watched? I mean, because it does feel like a full movie. What would you give the pilot? I mean, looking at it now,
I'd still rate this pretty high. I'd say maybe like an 8.5 out of 10.
8.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
I would say
maybe a 9 for like a cartoon pilot.
I'd be at 8.5 just because. 8.5 just because I think that the show. I think it really grabs you the first. There's not a dull moment in the pilot, and I think because now my thing is it's one of those serialized shows that basically means that you're going to watch one episode. You can't like turn on Gargoyles and go. It's not like Power Rangers where it's like, oh Johnny or oh Billy, I heard you got a B on that science project. oh no, the petri dish, Zed's gonna make that into a monster.
Right.
We have, it's not that. It has more. It's gonna be more of like
story
you
arcs.
have to watch.
Yeah.
You can't jump into episode 6 or episode 3 without knowing what goes on in episode 1 and 2.
Yeah, I feel like that sort of probably hurt it as a kid show.
Yeah,
to,
because
I
don't
watch
think
all the episodes.
I think now, because,
with streaming and stuff. Yeah.
Well, not with both streaming and I think with our generation becoming in our 30s, becoming the creators of TV shows and stuff, we really put time and effort. I mean, like I've said before, with Marvel movies, say what you want. Yeah, I do feel like we're in a superhero fatigue, but I feel like a lot of people took time and care with a lot of these characters, and not just like, oh, we'll just show them just to make a lot of
Right.
Yeah, we're gonna make a lot of money on it, but we're also going to put passion behind it. But that was our look on Gargoyles. I'm digging it. Come back next. We're going to be doing
like the Mask of Zorro, right?
The Mask of Zorro. I actually just did a pilot video for the Legend of Zorro, or not Legend of Zorro, the Zorro television series from 1963, and I kind of wanted to do The Mask of Zorro because that movie came out when I was 10, and that was one of my first PG-13 rated movies I got to watch by myself. So it has a
special place in your heart.
Special place in my heart. So, and then after that, we're going to the Continental because John Wick
4.
Chapter 4. And I'm gonna see if I can kill. Hopefully, when we finish it, Jay doesn't have to kill me with a pencil. Alrighty, guys. Peace out. Please, as I've said before, like and subscribe. If there's anything you guys want me to comment or talk about, please talk about it below. Anyway, my name's Steve.
And I'm Jay.
And peace.